Okay, everyone, we're at 12 o'clock, so we're going to start the session today. I may be letting people into the meeting as I do the introduction, so apologies if I'm stopping and starting. So by way of introduction, my name is Marie Hemingway. I'm one of the founders and directors of Speak Out Revolution. I'm absolutely delighted that Speak Out Revolution are partnering with Becoming International on 2 days event, which will be a webinar called Not Just a Victim, really to target our key audience and the key people that we want to help, targets of harassment and bullying in our workplaces, and providing them with tool sets and tips to help them navigate the situations that they're experiencing. So I'd just like to make everyone aware that we will be recording the session today. So please let me know if anybody has issues with that. What I'm going to do is promptly hand over to Liz and Alison to get our session started today. And if you do have any questions throughout the session, please do drop them into the chat and we can try and answer them at the end or in follow-up. Okay, over to Liz and Alison.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Marie, and a very warm welcome to you all onto this webinar. My name is Liz Walker, and I am a founder and director of Becoming International. And our mission is to help women to lead unapologetic lives. We do this through personal and professional development, working with individuals and with organisations. And today what we want to do in this webinar is talk about how we help and empower the victims of bullying and harassment, and how we ensure that they can retain their agency and their power and their control despite the ill treatment that they are facing. Because we believe that even if you are subject to that behaviour, you are not just a victim. Now, we do realise that the victims of bullying and harassment are not just women. And so it's not entirely aligned with the mission that you can see on the screen. But actually, the tools and the techniques that we use in our work are not gender specific. It's just that women is where our heart lies and the work that we do elsewhere. So the things that we will share with you today are relevant to everyone and will be applicable to you either as someone who is listening to this, finding yourself relating to the victim role. Maybe you've experienced a situation there where you feel like a victim, or you feel like you've experienced this at the moment or in the past. Or actually you might be listening to this and thinking that it's never happened to you. And if that's the case, then you are very fortunate. Because we do know that approximately a third of people experience workplace bullying at some time in their career. So if it hasn't happened to you, the chances are that it is happening around you. And so again, we'd encourage you to think about the tools and techniques that we share in this webinar from the perspective of how could I use these to help other people. Alison, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Liz. So I'm Alison Maitland. I work alongside Liz. I'm also co-founder and director of Becoming International. I really wanted to introduce us here to what we're here to do today. As Liz said, based on some fantastic data that Marie and Speak Out Revolution have pulled together and continue to do in their work with companies. We're going to share a simple model with you, which is going to help you to identify the different roles that people play in a bullying and harassment situation. But also try and think about, what some more of the impact of bullying and harassment has on people. And then, as Liz said, to share some techniques for both the person who's being ill-treated, but also the person who might be walking alongside them in that situation. And I just want to acknowledge, it's a big topic, and we're just dealing here with a tiny slice of tackling workplace bullying. If you haven't got with you, we always try and make things as active as possible. You might need a pen and paper with you for one or two of the activities. If you haven't got one, just grab one and get one to hand so you can take part in them. Now, we also know that, this is quite an emotive issue. And as Liz said, whether you've faced it or you're walking alongside someone who's doing that, it's a challenging issue that we're raising today. And so we want this to be a safe space for you. And in fact, you are in control of how much you interact with us on the session. So you can decide how much you want to engage with what we're saying, or actually you can just step back at a distance and observe it with interest. That's your choice. So feel free to do what you need to do. If you want to kick off your shoes, to feel safe, but whatever you need to do to feel safe and valued. And just to let you know, on our website and on our LinkedIn, we've also posted some resources that might be helpful if this has brought up some issues that you need to deal with. Marie.
Fantastic, thanks Alison. Just doing the typical unmuting before I start talking. So thanks so much Alison. I'm going to kick off the session by talking through some data that we gathered at Speak Out Revolution to really set us up for the tool sets and recommendations that Alison and Liz are going to put forward. So would you be able to move on to the next slide for me, please, Liz? So by way of introduction to Speak Out Revolution, for those of you who are unfamiliar with us, we are a not-for-profit founded in 2020 with a mission to cancel the culture of silence on harassment and bullying in our workplaces. And this really stemmed from challenges that I was seeing across my personal and professional network. So the way that we're doing that is we are hosting a global survey, the Speak Out survey, to empower anyone who has experienced harassment and bullying around the world to document their experience of harassment and bullying and also their route to resolution. And our long-term goal is to host and launch the Speak Out dashboard to bring the collective intelligence of everyone who has experienced these challenges in the workplace and the challenges of trying to resolve them into one place, to empower people to safely speak out and also to empower those who want to be allies for inclusive working to understand what this looks like and where they should target their efforts to resolve the problem. And we'll be launching the Speak Out dashboard in the next few weeks, which is pretty exciting. So please do check out our website if that would be of interest to you. Could we move on to the next slide? So we wanted to make the start of the session a little bit interactive. And what I would love for us to do is join in a really brief poll. So I've added a link to the chat to a Slido poll. So could I ask everyone if you're able to access the link? And I really want to get a sense from this session of what people think the most common form of harassment and bullying that people experience is. So we've got 5 options here. What I'm going to do is throw up the screen now so we can have a look at what everyone is seeing. Okay, so the poll is live. Hoping, Liz and Alison, that you can see my screen, and I'm looking for results coming in. Fantastic, 2 so far. So I think we have about 30 people on this call, so I will aim for about 20 results, and then I'll start talking about what we're seeing. Okay, this looks nice. Okay, so we started to cool off, that's fine. So this is really interesting. So what we're seeing here is as the primary form of harassment and bullying that people feel like is most prevalent in our organizations is microaggressions. So it's those everyday slights and insults, death by 1,000 cuts. And actually this is really prevalent in terms of training that I'm seeing being delivered across women's networks, the microaggressions that are targeted towards women. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen, and I'm hoping that we are back onto the presentation to take a look at how well we did. So actually, we did pretty well. Microaggressions, based on the reports that we are seeing, come in second place in terms of the most prevalent form of harassment and bullying. In first place, what we see from the Speak Out survey is that gaslighting is the most prevalent form of harassment and bullying within organizations globally. And this is manipulative behavior aimed at making an individual question their reality, a form of psychological abuse. And it's not really well understood within the UK. So the second most prevalent form of harassment and bullying is microaggressions, so these everyday slights and insults, which is probably what the majority of people may see happen, just those slight put downs. Liz, I've lost the slides. I'm just wondering where they're at. And then the third most common form of harassment and bullying that we see is discounting. So this is repeatedly and openly discounting the work of others in the workplace. And actually, we see some slight variations between the genders, but for positions 1 and 2, gaslighting and microaggressions, that's the same for men and women. And I think the key takeaway from this slide for me is that these can be really, really subtle behaviors in the workplace. It doesn't have to be obvious, but the impacts can still be significant. And so maybe we could just move on to the next slide, Liz. So to talk more about the impacts that we see, without intervention, these behaviors all lead to one common outcome, which is really my driver behind the work that we're doing at Speak Out Revolution. And I pulled a quote directly from the Speak Out survey from an individual that said, made them feel like they didn't fit in, that their contributions and feelings aren't valued. And for me, that's really important working in the engineering sector, where we are relying on the diversity of thought in our workforce to drive innovation in our solutions that we deliver to society. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that if you have people in your workplace that don't feel valued, that don't feel like they fit in, and that their contributions are not adding value to the conversation, that they're not employees that are really driving the vision of your organization and bringing it to fruition. So looking at the top 3 impacts of this behavior, what we see is 4 out of 5 people want to leave. And actually something like 60% of people that do experience harassment and bullying in the workplace will leave as a direct consequence of that experience. For mental health, 4 out of 5 people say that these experiences, even beyond the harassment and bullying itself, potentially for years afterwards, negatively impact their mental health. And the processes that we put people through to resolve this also add to that negative detriment of mental health. And then thirdly, what we see is a massive impact to individuals' confidence. People feel eroded by the behavior and they lose confidence in their abilities, and they start to question their contributions in the workplace. And I see this a lot for women in particular, as women saying that they are experiencing imposter syndrome, which to me is the effects of low-level gender-based harassment over a period of time. Could we move on to the next slide, please, Liz? Okay, so back to the poll. So people could access the link that is in the chat, or hopefully you've still got it up. What I wanted to see is what people think is the most likely, who is most likely responsible for these poor behaviors in the workplace. So that poll should be live. I'm going to put the results up on my screen as we work. Okay, we have 11 votes in so far. I'm wondering if this might be people that have experienced these problems in the workplace. And I'll aim for about 17 votes. I think that's what we had previously. Okay, this looks great. So I think we're clearly seeing here that that people on this call identify direct managers as the most likely relationship to an individual to be considered a harasser or bully. So I'm going to jump back to our slide deck and see what our survey is saying for people that have documented this behavior. So congratulations everyone on this call. I will say great job. What we see from reports that we receive at Speak Out Revolution is that the majority of people that report harassment and bullying will identify their harasser as, we name it a direct manager. I prefer to say someone who has direct authority over someone's work or work output. And so for everyone, whether you are male or female, the most likely person that will harass you is a male manager with direct authority over you. I don't, so it might be slightly speculative. I just wanted to say, I don't think this is a problem that we have with men. I think that the reason this results like this is because more men hold positions of authority as opposed to men are more likely to harass or bully. And I would note that actually one thing that we do see is around 40% of harassers are identified as female. And for women in particular, I hear that they were really reluctant to identify their situation as a poor one because they couldn't quite believe that a woman would harass or bully them in the workplace. So that's just something that I wanted to flag up there. And then moving on to the next slide, what's the behaviour linked to? So this is really different between the sexes. For women, it's most likely associated with the fact that you are female, which I find really disappointing because it's the hardest thing for me to hide. And then for men, it's most likely associated with your age. One interesting thing that we see in our survey here is this is just looking at the protected characteristics as defined in the Equality Act. Actually, for men, the most likely thing harassment and bullying is associated with is nothing. So it calls into question how protected men are in law from poor behaviours in the workplace. And then I think on to the last slide, and I'm hoping I'm sticking to time. Just want to do one final poll, and this is looking at how we think most harassment and bullying takes place in our workplaces. So I'm going to start the poll on the third and final question. And I'm going to steal the screen and put up the results for us to take a look at. Oh, this is fantastic. Okay, so we've got 8 votes in, and in the lead is At Work Without Witnesses. And we're coming up to 12 votes, so I'll just leave it a couple more seconds for people to... Okay, fantastic. So in the interest of time, okay, At Work Without Witnesses, I'm going to jump back now to the presentation and let's take a look at what we are seeing in our survey results. So this is really interesting to me, and I feel like I can talk about it all day, but I'm going to be very brief. So actually, that is what we think happens. We think harassment and bullying happens without people present, behind closed doors. And actually what we see is that the majority of harassment and bullying will happen at work, face to face, with witnesses, often multiple witnesses present. And I think for me, this speaks to the fact that the problem is not a workplace problem. It's a societal and cultural problem that naturally shows up in our workplace. Often more so than outside, because we can't control the people that we're exposed to when we go to work. And so that's just one key thing that I would want people to take away. This is happening with people around us. Could we move to the next, I think, final slide, Liz? And then just before I hand back over to Liz and Alison to talk about the things that we can do here, one thing that I'd like to finish on is for organisations, what we're seeing is they only see a subset of the problem. Around 1 in 4 people will formally report to their organisation. So there's a lot of harassment and bullying that isn't seen or understood by companies. And actually, when we look at who people will go to when they informally report, when they reach out to someone in their organisation but not enter into a formal process, there are a lot of other people involved in these conversations that potentially can help. And so what I want to do is hand over to Liz and Alison, because I'd really like, when that happens, for that to happen well, so that we can limit the number of people that have to go through these processes that impact their mental health negatively. So that's everything from me. Liz, Alison, I hope that was a good introduction, and I will stop talking and hand back over to you to continue our session. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Marie. And it's so great to actually start to talk about this topic on the basis of some data and some good data to really understand what's going on underneath the bonnet of this. It's very easy to think we know what's underneath everything. And so, as well, Liz, and I really appreciate the work that you do at Speak Out Revolution to actually put some facts underneath this so we can tackle what's really the issue. And I want to pull out what you've just spoken about, that very last part, that actually we often think about bullying and harassment in the workplace as between 2 people, between someone who's on the receiving end of it and someone who's actually perpetrating that bullying or harassment. And actually what you've highlighted for us is there are 3 people in this relationship. It goes on around you. You will have seen it. You will have walked alongside somebody. You will be asked or want to support somebody. So actually, there are 3 people in that. And whether you call them an ally, a bystander, or something else, there's a 3rd person in this relationship around bullying. And so what we're going to do is just use, I guess, a tool, you might think about it as a tool or a model that can help us think about it. It's called the drama triangle. It's not new. It's applied to all sorts of things, but it helps us to think through when there are relationships between people. And so what we have in bullying and harassment effectively is a negative reinforcing triangle, and we have 3 parties to it. So we have the victim, who can often feel quite helpless, maybe hopeless, maybe ashamed, certainly powerless, because bullying and harassment happens where there's a power imbalance. And they may often also give up on the situation and avoid making decisions or try strategies on their own to solve their problems. We obviously have the persecutor, so that's the person who's doing the bullying. They're the one who's dominating the victim in some way and being critical of them. Or maybe also, as you all highlighted in some of your answers to Marie's questions, they may be discounting the impact of their own behaviours on the person. And then there's a third person in the drama triangle. There's the person who perhaps wants to step in and help, that ally. And in the drama triangle, we give them the name the rescuer. It could be a witness, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague. There's someone who feels that they need to step in and actually try and save that victim. And this triangle is built around one notion. It's built around the notion of a role that the person has. And so each person comes into these 3 relationships with the label of I am something. And actually, from our point of view, that's not helpful. Because what we need to do in a bullying and harassment situation for our mental health and to also resolve the issue is to step off the drama triangle. Now, if we do that, that's when, if we're on the receiving end of bullying and harassment, we have the opportunity to remember we're not just a victim in this situation. And so what we need to do is actually stop thinking about what's going on from an I am perspective. I am a rescuer, I am a victim, but actually shift it to I can. So let's take a look at what that means in terms of how these relationships work out and what that role might be for you, whether you're on the receiving end of it or whether you're someone who wants to walk alongside. So let's take a look first at the persecutor. Now, I'm hoping that we haven't got many bullies on the call here, or at least you maybe not owning up to it, because actually we all do bully, but hey, that's for another time. But the shift here is relevant because we don't have control over that bully. And so what that bully or the persecutor needs to do, probably with the help of their organisation, is to hold themselves accountable for what they're doing. And so they may need to work on their self-awareness, their empathy, how they influence people, how they use assertiveness. But as I said, we, as either the person helping or the person on the receiving end, can't control whether that persecutor is ready or willing to go on that journey and make a change in the behaviour. So we can only do things that are about our own behaviour. So let's imagine on this call now, listening to me here, you're thinking that maybe you're someone who's a rescuer. And actually what you need to do is move from that mindset of being, I'm a rescuer, I am a rescuer, to actually that mindset of I can offer support. So if you've been a witness or someone's confided in you, many of you want to act as allies to people who are experiencing bullying. And I guess the watch out here for you is to avoid stepping into that rescuer role. I am the rescuer, because that disempowers the victim and stops them and makes them the problem. And in fact, I actually prefer the word to actively bystand rather than to be an ally, because actually you're acting as allies. You're actively bystanding here on this and choosing what to do. So instead, you need to look for opportunities to support. So you can show to that individual you care about them and their experience by actively listening to them and supporting them. Of course, you need to hold some clear boundaries about what you can and can't do. And the golden rule that Liz and I would probably apply is do nothing for them that they can't do for themselves. And then you also are able to call out that persecutor and the organisation to find opportunities for change. And most importantly, maybe, is to remind that victim that they themselves have their own agency in all of this. They have power in the situation. And some of the tools we're going to share are tools that you can share with people who you might be offering support to. And then if you are one of those stats that Liz and Marie shared, that you have been on the receiving end of bullying and harassment, then actually you have an opportunity here to move from being a victim, I am a victim, to a mindset of I can be empowered in this situation. And as I said, we're going to share some tools in a moment to help you with that. And what you're doing is make that mindset shift from the victim to that mindset of empowerment. So you can acknowledge the fact that this is really horrible. It's uncomfortable. The feelings are rubbish, basically. And what you can't do is undo what happened. It has happened to you. So make space for those thoughts and feelings. But also to realize that you are more than those thoughts and feelings that have happened to you, and that you do have choice and agency in this situation. And you have choices that you can make that align to who you are and what you stand for. And as I said before, remember, if you're in that triangle, remember that the only thing you have control over is you, not the other person, you. So let's take a look at some of the tools that we're going to use. So Liz, I'm going to hand over to you as we make this shift.
Super, thank you, Alison. So one of the things we want to work on with you is to work with the thoughts and feelings that people have when they are experiencing that ill treatment. So I want to start by asking you to just bring up some of those thoughts and feelings. Now, we know that not everyone is the victim of continued bullying and harassment, but I'm pretty sure that if you dig deep in your memory, that you can think of a time when you have felt put down, or maybe insulted, or intimidated, or threatened in some way, or undermined, or humiliated. And you know, you might say to me, gosh, I'm going all the way back to primary school. I don't think it actually matters, because those thoughts and those feelings are the same. Okay, they might not be as deep and as immediate as they are for somebody who's going through it right now, but they give us an insight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a few photos that might evoke some of those words for you. And I'm going to ask you in the chat to just share with me some of the words that come up for you as you're thinking about the thoughts and feelings related to your experience of having been in some way bullied or harassed. Maybe not continually, but maybe just in a moment. So if you can find the chat button along the top of your meeting screen and add your comments in. And if you're not comfortable thinking about it for yourself, then maybe you've seen it, maybe you've witnessed it, and you can share some of the words that other people have shared with you. So we've got some coming through now. Humiliated, trapped, ashamed, alone, manipulated, depressed, anxious, panic, dread, worthless, broken, unfair, frustrated, paralyzed, confused. Gosh, these are very powerful feelings that people are sharing. Walking on eggshells, afraid, alone. Yeah, lovely. Thank you, people. Ashamed and like, thank you. Those are really powerful thoughts and feelings to be having. And outside it, it's really hard to hold those thoughts and feelings, and they can, I love that word, paralyze. They can absolutely paralyze you. I can remember one of my own little moments where somebody that I worked with at work that I found very difficult to be with turned to me in a meeting and said, "So what have you been doing?" in a tone of voice that made it very clear how little she valued what I had been doing. And I remember that kind of sense of feeling really hot with embarrassment and kind of paralyzed, like the kind of tingling in my fingers, like I couldn't do anything. So yes, I remember that. Thank you. So what I'd like to do then is to just encourage you to hold those thoughts and feelings, just hold on to them in your mind, because we're now going to work with them, because that's what we actually have some agency around. And the first tool or technique that I want to share with you is something that we use. It's called dropping anchor. And I'm just going to smile at Karen, who I can see on the line, because she'll recognize this one from the work that she's done with us in the past. So one of the things that happens for an individual who's experiencing those kinds of thoughts and feelings that you've just been sharing with us is that because it happens over a prolonged period of time, those thoughts grow and grow to the point where they feel inescapable. Okay, they feel like a storm, and you feel like you're a tiny little boat out at sea being tossed around in the waves and in the rain and the thunder and the lightning, completely at the mercy of all those thoughts and feelings. And if you think back to the data that Marie shared with us, 82% of people report an ongoing, potentially long-term impact on their mental health. And some of the words that were behind that data that Marie shared were around panic attacks and crying and feeling sick. So they're like that tiny boat in that great big storm. And what we want to do is just think about what you can do then, what you can do. Because often what we say to people is we say, oh, just ignore it, or don't think about it, or think positive. Okay. And actually, when you're that boat on that stormy sea, it's really hard to ignore it. Okay. When you're going from side to side, and maybe like me, you get seasick, it's really hard to ignore it. It's really hard to find the positive in the situation. So what we would do if we were working with people in this kind of situation is, rather than try and ignore it or control it in any way, we would do something called dropping anchor. And I'm going to try and share that with you now. It's a tool that's about focusing on the here and now. It's about getting centered and kind of focusing on what's really important to you and finding a way to regain some control and power. So if I stop presenting so you can see my face, I'm going to ask you all to just do this with me. You don't have to be on camera, but just hold those thoughts and feelings, those beautiful words that you shared with me earlier about shame and confusion and panic and paralysis and helplessness. And just start by sitting up straight and pushing your feet firmly into the floor. And feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel how firm it is and how it resists your feet. Okay, so you've still got these thoughts and feelings in your mind, but your feet are connected to the floor. And as you've got your feet on the floor now, I want you to stand or sit up straight wherever you are and just notice your body. Notice how it stretches out and how it's connected to your chair or to the floor. And maybe push your hands together and just feel that connection between your fingers, between your palms. Feel the power of your arms pushing your hands together. And notice that you've still got those thoughts and feelings. So you're in your situation, you're being thrown around by the sea in the storm, and you're feeling helpless and panicked and paralyzed. But actually, you have a body. You have your feet connected to the floor. You have your bottom sat on the chair. You have your hands connected together. Your spine holds up your head. Your shoulders and your arms are pushing your hands together. You can feel your breath, maybe concentrate on your breath, breathing in and out, flooding in and out of your lungs. So those thoughts and feelings are there in your mind, but this is your body and it's here and it's working for you. It responds to you. So now maybe look around the room. Look around and just find 3 or 4 or 5 things and notice them. Notice their color and their shape and their size. Maybe they're things that are important to you. I can see a photo of my son, one of my sons. And just as you notice those things, remember that those thoughts and feelings are still there in your mind, but you've still got your body here connected to the floor, connected to your seat, with your spine holding you up, and you've still got these beautiful things around you. And now connect to your hearing. Think about what you can hear. So you can definitely hear my voice. I'm hoping you can't hear my tumble dryer. Maybe you can hear yours. Can you hear the wind outside? Can you hear birds? A plane going over? Somebody talking in the background? So you've still got these thoughts and feelings. They're still here. You've still got this body that's ready to support you and act for you. You've got these lovely things around you that you're connected to, and you've got those sounds going on. There's a world around you that you are connected into. And maybe if you're in a room with other people, you can actually notice those people and notice that they're there to help you and they're ready to work with you, to support you in some way. And hopefully what that does for you is remind you that you are not just your thoughts and feelings. You are not just a victim. You have this body. It's connected to the earth. It has power. It has energy. You have these things around you that are connected to you. You can hear. You can connect to people. So those thoughts and feelings are not all that you are. You have power and you have agency. And if you did that along with me, feel free to just pop anything in the chat about how that was for you. how that perhaps changed your relationship with those thoughts and feelings. I can notice for myself, there we go, look, I feel calm, it lightened them, relaxed. I can notice for myself that that has slightly dissipated the panic that always comes to me with doing a webinar in front of 30 strangers. Fiona says, I smiled. Thank you, Fiona. And Krishna says, what a beautiful, gentle way to restore calm and a sense of control. That's lovely. And Laura says, that was powerful. The language you used to describe the purpose of the body. I've ignored my poor body for so long because of bullying. Oh, Laura. And it's still there waiting to serve you, waiting to be of service to you and provide you with power and agency. It will be there for you when you're ready. Fantastic. Okay, so that was our first technique, and you can use that for yourself, and also you can share that very easily with people. And it's a way of just remembering that those thoughts and feelings are just thoughts and feelings. They are just words, and you have a body and you have power and you have agency. Let me hand back to you, Alison, to share our second technique.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks. And thanks so much, everyone, for sharing, how that's impacted all of you. So the second technique we want to share really is because, as Liz said, one thing that happens to us when we experience bullying and harassment is that we start to feel as if we are those thoughts and feelings, as if we are the storm, and that the storm is all there is. So if you go back to Marie's data, 84% of people report an impact on their confidence. They start to question their abilities. As she said, they suffer imposter syndrome, and they're terrified about doing other things like going for interviews and opening up other opportunities. So we'd like to share with you now a really simple approach to helping yourself, or again, if you're that active bystander, to help somebody else to realise that they're more than just the storm. They're more than all the feelings and thoughts that are coming there and feel really overwhelming to them. So what I want you to do is hold on to, I know Liz has done a fantastic job of giving you some distance and allowing you to smile, but bring those thoughts and feelings back in that situation that you were thinking about, if you would do right now. And I want you to take your piece of paper if you've got it. Liz is going to share a slide with you. And on your piece of paper, I'd like you to draw a big outline of the letter I on it for me, as big as you can do on your bit of paper. So there's plenty of space in that I. Great. And when you've done that, then I want you to think about just adding a little lowercase I within that big capital I for each of the thoughts and feelings you have in your mind related to that bullying, harassment, that incident, whenever it was, as Liz said, that's happened to you that you're thinking of. You don't have to write the word in, you can just put a little I in there for the thoughts and feelings that come up for you. You shared some of them, like ashamed or unliked or anxious, depressed, manipulated. Just put a little I on your diagram there. Yeah, so you might be thinking of all of those thoughts. And you might also be thinking, oh, as a result of that, that means I'm something, I'm small, I'm stupid, maybe I'm weak. It could be you're angry, I'm angry. Again, just put a little I in there for all of those things that you think that you are as a result of that. Okay, and if you've got those, now I want you to carry on putting your eyes in your shape there. And I want you now to put some eyes in there for all the things that you think that the bully or the person who's been mean to you or hurt you in that way, what you think they would say about you. So they might say, you're stupid, or you're clumsy, or you're incompetent, Or if you're one of that 70+% of people who've been gaslit, you're crazy, or you've got it wrong. Yeah, so just put another I in there for all of those things that you think that person who's been bullying you, who's harmed you, will be thinking and saying about you. Just keep writing those I's in there. Okay, so now I want you to carry on writing on your paper, but this time start to write down some I's that represent the things that your friends and your family would say about you. And they're pretty likely, I hope, to be kinder and more caring things. So, they might say that you're generous, or you're funny, or you're caring, or you're someone they want to be with. So just put an I down for each of those things that those people around you who care for you would say about you. So you should have an I that's starting to look a little bit like my one on the screen now. Keep putting an I in for all of those things that they would say about you. And now I want you to keep adding some I's on there, but maybe write down some things that you think are true about you. So maybe you're trustworthy, or maybe you're fair. Maybe you're someone who's gentle, positive. Whatever it is that you know about yourself deep down in your heart, or about who you are. The things that are true about yourself. So now your eyes should be looking pretty full of things. Okay, and then lastly, just going to ask you one more time to keep filling up your eye, but this time start writing I's in for things that are objective about you. So facts about who you are or what you have in your life. So I might say I'm a mother, or I'm a runner, I'm a friend, I'm a house owner. Yeah, and if it happened to you, you might also say, I'm a victim of bullying. So put your eyes in for all of those things that are true about you, about who you are. You can even fill the corners in, should be pretty full up by now. So I want you now just to look down at your piece of paper and see that those are all the thoughts and feelings and facts about you. But actually, I've got a question for you. Are they all that you are? I'm pretty sure we haven't captured everything about who you are, even with all of that on that piece of paper. And if you kept writing, if we had more time, you could write down more and more words, and they would start to get an idea about who that you are. So what we're doing here is introducing you to the notion that the big I is all of these things and more. So you're not the storm, you're not even the sea, and you're not the clouds, you're not even the wind or the rain. In fact, actually, you're like the sky. Your big I is like the sky that can encompass all of the storms and all of the weather that come rolling through. So you're not just a victim, you're more than all of these thoughts and feelings. And you have agency, and you have power, and you have choice. And I'm going to hand back to Liz, because that takes us on to our last tool.
Alison, if I could just interrupt before you hand back over, we do have a hand up. So I was wondering if we could perhaps take a quick question.
Yes, of course.
So
Off mute, whoever's got their hand up.
if whoever put their hand up wants to come off of mute or type in the question in the chat.
Looks like it might be Fiona.
Fiona is, Alison, Fiona's asking if you can share the list that you just used.
Yes, I will. Yes, I will make contact and share that with you.
Okay, thanks so much. I will
Brilliant.
go back on mute now.
Thanks, Marie.
Over to you.
Liz, over to you.
Okay, so the last thing that we want to look at today is that feeling that the victim has, that they just don't have a choice. Okay, they're controlled by that storm. They have no power and no agency in what they're going to do. And that came through really clearly in Marie's data, with 84% feeling like they had to leave their job. They had to change their career direction, they had to resign, or they had to take a pay cut in order to just kind of survive this situation. And we believe in the situation of workplace bullying and harassment that you do have a choice. Everyone has a choice, whether you are the victim or the bystander or the bully itself. And that choice, as we've been saying all along, relates to the thing that you do have control over, which is yourself, and the actions that you can take to step off that drama triangle. So, as the bystander, or moving away from that rescuer role, what that's about is stepping away from that rescuing need, that need to be the rescuer, and thinking about the actions that you can take to support people. And as the victim at the top of the triangle there, that's about actively stepping out of the I am a victim mode and into the I can be more empowered mindset. So using perhaps some of the tools that we've shared, so that ability to drop anchor and regain focus in the moment, notice that you have that control over the storm or over the thoughts and feelings that are going on for you. And then also noticing that you are more than that storm. You are more than just these thoughts and feelings that this situation is creating for you. And then that you do have choice. So this is not so much a tool as just a simple approach to reminding people that they do have some choice. So if you think back to your example, and I know we've kind of taken you away from it and then sent you back into it, this is all very confusing, but if you think back to those words that you were sharing about humiliation and depression and anxiety, and if you think back to that example where you felt like you were the victim, I'm going to encourage you to think about the possibilities that you had in that moment to act and the choices that you had in that moment. So as the victim, you could have chosen to leave, to walk away. You might have chosen to stay and do nothing. And if you do that, then the situation potentially stays the same or gets worse. Or you could have chosen to stay and do something, to make to some sort of action that you would have hoped would have made it better. And as the bystander, as the witness to this, those many witnesses that Marie was describing in her data, you do have choices too. You can choose to ignore it, to be blind to it, and to willfully ignore it if you want. You can also choose to stay on this drama triangle and be the rescuer, be the white knight on the shining knight on the white horse, whichever way around that goes, and kind of to reinforce that disempowered feeling that the victim has, that helpless feeling. Or you can choose to step off and offer that support that we were talking about earlier. So all I want you to do now is just think about your choices, and without any sort of judgment of yourself, no kind of, this was the only thing that I could possibly have done, without any judgment about yourself, just encourage yourself, push yourself to think about 2 things that you could have done in that moment. So that example that you were using to evoke those thoughts and feelings, just think of 2 things that you could have done. I don't know if I'm allowed to share this here, but I'm going to share it because it might make you smile. My mum has told me ever since I started my professional career, my mum has always said to me, Liz, no one's ever going to argue with you needing to go to the toilet. So she would tell you that you can always just say, excuse me, I need to leave. And as you're thinking about those 2 things, I'm just going to ask you whether you could think of another one, or even another 2. No judgment. It's not about whether you've done the right thing or the wrong thing. It's about what the possibilities were in that moment. because really that's what we're trying to encourage you and the victim of whatever the situation is to think about. We're not going to ask you to share these. They're personal to your situation or whatever it was that you were going through, and only you can look at the list and judge whether any of them would have helped in any way. But the main point we're trying to get across here is that you do have control, you do have choice. You are not just a victim. And hopefully by using the technique about dropping the anchor, by remembering that you are more than just the thoughts and feelings related to that situation, you then have the room almost to think about possibilities. So Alison, I think that brings us to a close.
It does. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Marie. Yes, we are pretty much at the end of our webinar today. And as we said at the beginning, we're here to explore this concept of being not just a victim. If you've been on the receiving end of this, there's no denying you have been a victim. It has happened to you. We're not saying that. And hopefully what you've seen throughout all of this, that you are more than that. And if you're the ally or the bystander, the person working alongside, you can also help that person to see that. And so using that brilliant data that Marie and Speak Out Revolution have created, we hope that you can help people, and you yourselves are helped to know that you're not just a victim. So I think we want to say thank you to Marie and the Speak Out team today. I hope you found the tools and techniques really helpful. From our point of view, if you're interested in more, we run open online programs called the Becoming Journey. It's not about being bullied or victimized. It's about learning how to become yourself actually as a leader within an organization. But check out our website. We have some dates coming up in throughout 2021. And by all means, follow us on LinkedIn. We're pretty active in posting against that mission that Liz said of helping women to lead unapologetic lives. So by all means, check us out or follow us on LinkedIn. Marie, I think you're going to close for us.
Thank you so much, Alison. So Alison, Liz, thank you so much. I'm dangerously calm at this point in time from going through all of those exercises with you, and I'm so grateful that we can use the anonymous experiences of people that have submitted to our survey to direct efforts such as this to help people that really need help within their workplaces until we can solve the problem. So I just want to say, a massive thank you from Speak Out Revolution, and for anybody on this call, if you are in a position to, please share your experience in the Speak Out Revolution survey to help us build our data sets and help us target collaborations like this so we can start to shift the dial in this space and cancel the culture of silence on harassment and bullying in our workplaces. And then just a quick one from me to say, we are looking to develop more tailored training and courses like this. So if you had feedback, please let us know. If you think this would be valuable in your organization, please reach out to us. Happy to discuss. And we have recorded this session. We will be making it available if there are other people that that could benefit from what we've talked through today. So I will say thank you so much, Liz. Thank you so much, Alison. And from Speak Out Revolution, please follow us on. We're on all of the social media channels. Please check us out at speakoutrevolution.co.uk, and I hope that you'll follow us and join us for a future session. And with 6 minutes to spare, please go make yourself a cup of tea and go to the toilet before your next meeting. Thanks so much, everyone. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.